So I like to always start by sharing how we got involved in this work. Growing up as a young person, my mother was a herbalist, and I was the guinea pig. So she used to bring home all these concoctions, and I used to pinch my nose and try to swallow as quick as I could, and hope that the remedy wasn't as bad as the complaint. That was my introduction to natural remedies. But growing up as a young man, as many of us do, we don't pay much attention as we ought. And so I lived a very unhealthy lifestyle. First 21 years of my life, I can't remember eating a healthy meal. But in the providence of God, I ended up becoming very interested in health. May have been my mother's influence over time, but I started studying physiology, ended up teaching anatomy and physiology, went on to take more studies into the medical side of things. And my wife and I, we traveled to the Philippines. Anyone been to the Philippines? Anyone here?
Yes.
No, you have? Okay, yes, I know, Udi. You got some extra blessings over there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my wife and I, once we were married, we traveled to the Philippines, and my wife had a serious case of insomnia that lasted over 6 years, and she could not sleep past midnight. And this went on for nearly 6 years. So we went to talk to the best of the best, but no one could give us any answers. And so my wife ended up reading a medical herbal textbook called Medical Herbalism by David Hoffman. And when she read this book, she was thinking of trying to help someone else, and in the providence of God, she ended up trying it herself, and within 3 days she was back to 8 hours sleep a night after pretty much zero sleep. So if you've been sick for 6 years and find something that works, you sort of want to shout it from the rooftops. And so we were very, very much pleased with the results, but it took a few months to really get her back to where she felt normal again. If you've been sleep deprived for several years, just catching up on some sleep doesn't bring you all the way back to normal. We also tried herbs with pregnancy. My wife and I tried for several years to have children and couldn't have children, and that biological clock was ticking down, and so we thought, when is this thing going to happen? But there's my son back there. You can know it did happen. He's right back there. So we tried a herb called, or my wife tried a herb called Vitex. Vitex agnus castus is the botanical name. It's commonly called chasteberry. And so she tried this herb, and within 2 weeks she was pregnant. Now, I'm not saying you'll get pregnant if you take this herb, but there's a higher likelihood if you're trying to get pregnant that it will help with that. So she got pregnant within 2 weeks, and we had our son around the age of 40, and then we thought that was it. We got a child to be, but after seeing 3 years of selfishness in our son, we thought he needed a sibling, so we tried again, and lo and behold, we got a little sister, Emily, and now we use herbs to calm them down and herbs to keep us energized. Now, our son John, he had some immune problems. My wife couldn't breastfeed. She had Raynaud's syndrome of the breast, and so the milk wasn't letting down. And so there's no substitute for mother's milk, as you know, but we did our best with what we had. And, but he was getting sick half his life, so we tried to use another herb that could help him with his immune system. And so we got hold of a herb called elderberry. Actually, I brought it out for you all to see here. And it's a little berry. If you want to pass that around, this is great for the immune system. Now, historically, do you know the number one remedy, the most successful remedy in the history of the world for pandemics, for viral pandemics, is elderberry. And I never heard it mentioned once on the news, did you? No. In fact, when you go online, they say don't take elderberry if you got COVID because it could cause a cytokine storm. Well, if you read the study that they even cite from, it doesn't even say that. It causes a cytokine response, which is very different than a cytokine storm. Now, anytime you have an infection, you have cytokines. These are little messengers that the white blood cells send to each other to notify there's an infection to come to that area. And so elderberry can help with that, but it doesn't actually create a cytokine storm where you get a drowning effect, pretty much like pneumonia with white blood cells. You're drowning in your own fluid. So elderberry is one of the best things you can take for viral infection, and it's very good to help with the respiratory system. It's very good for colds, flus, upper respiratory tract infections. If you're feeling run down, your immune system's a little weak, try elderberry. So after using elderberry, we noticed a big change in my son's conditions. He wasn't sick 50% of his life, he was like 10%, and it got better over time, and he hardly gets sick now, which is really, we're really thankful for that. Okay, so after these series of events, you know, with my wife's sickness and immune function and not being able to have children, and then I started studying herbs more specifically, and then I did master herbalism studies, naturopathic studies, ended up teaching at university, and now we have our own herbal business called the American Herb Shop, and we have online students. We teach all around the world, and so even in a remote place, like, well, you're not too remote, but for me you're remote, okay, in Arkansas. So now we supply a lot of different medical clinics and lifestyle centers, and also health food stores. So we have the blessing of being able to formulate them and put things together to help people. So that was our little journey, how we got involved in the herbal side. I thought I'd just mention that to you because everyone has a story, right? And so these are my little herbal medical friends, these plants that we use, and so my role is really to educate, and I tell people, you know, if you can swallow some education, you can avoid a lot of medication, right? So that's what we want to do today. We want to educate. I don't want anyone to think there is you know, a cure for everything. We're not at the tree of life yet, right? We're close to the tree of life here, right? But we're not at we're not actually at the tree of life. So there's not one herb that works 100% of the time for 100% of people. But that being said, the vast majority of people, I see results with the herbs. So that's what keeps me going, doing what I'm doing, because, you know, if something's not working, you better find another profession, right? So since we're a small group, maybe it would be good to sort of find out what you all would like me to talk about specifically, you know, when it comes to a certain condition, so that way I can sort of weave it into the presentation and hopefully give you some information you can take home that is specific to your needs. So, is anyone? Yes?
Hypothyroidism?
Hypothyroidism, yes. I was going to talk about that. That's two birds with one stone. So, okay.
Side by side.
Yes, that's right.
Low vitamin D.
Low vitamin D. Okay. Yep. We can certainly talk about that.
How do you diagnose people? Do you do blood tests, or how?
I send them off to the clinic to get blood work done. Yeah. So I rely heavily on that, and also, you know, just what people tell me. Usually people already have been diagnosed before they come to me. Anyone else?
Maybe eye diseases?
Eye diseases? Okay,
Glaucoma,
yep.
cataracts?
Cataracts, glaucoma, yep, we can cover that. All
And low energy,
right. Low energy. Yes.
definitely low
Low energy. Sure, we can cover that. All right. Any more takers?
Hypoglycemia.
Hypoglycemia. Okay.
That should cover all the degenerative ones.
Yes. All right. Okay. Well, if you think of any more, and
Prostate.
talk, then please.
Prostate.
Prostate. Prostate. Yes.
And diabetes.
Prostate and diabetes. Okay. All right. Yep. I think we got a good handle on things. So let me just share with you some basic principles to help you with understanding herbs. Because I get a lot of questions that are the same wherever you go, and it's good for people to understand how they can be their own doctor in a way, not to take the place of doctors, but just how you can intelligently use natural remedies the most effective way. And to do that, you need some basic knowledge. When it comes to herbs, there are a few things that people often have questions about, and they're very valid and good questions. So often people ask me, what about dosage, right? This is a big one. So let me just, off the bat, just give you some general principles. So dosage, anytime you go to a supplement store or UDI store, you'll find the supplements are based on a 150-pound person. All right, so weight is more accurate than age. I mean, I've met 9-year-old boys that are 300 pounds. All right, so you want to go more by weight than you do by age. So there are 4 main things you regulate dosage on. Weight. Secondly is the condition. Thirdly is the severity of the condition. And fourthly is the sensitivity of the person to herbs. Now, in many cases, if people are sensitive to drugs, they have quite a pronounced reaction to a drug, then usually they'll have that with a herb. All right, so if you're very sensitive, you can take the lowest dose when it comes to a drug. Usually a herb at a low dose would be similar as far as dosage. Okay, so if someone has, for example, severe case of arthritis racked throughout the whole body, then I'd probably recommend a high dosage. All right, so but generally it's usually weight and severity of conditions that have more priority than the other 2 that I mentioned. All right, so that's really important to know. Also, the form in which the herb is located is very important. So herbs are like foods. They have a shelf life and they spoil, they go off and they lose their potency. So if something is a leaf, then it usually has about a 12-month lifespan. All right, so that doesn't mean at the stroke of midnight, like Cinderella, it just disappears. It just means that basically you have to take a larger dosage to get the same amount that's therapeutic. All right, so herbs lose their potency. I don't buy, and I used to not buy from health food stores or herbal shops because we owned our own herbal shops, but wherever I went, I found they had see-through containers, like glass or plastic containers, and light will destroy every property of a herb within about 3 months. All right, so totally devitalize it. And this is why, if you'd come to our store, you would have seen we had hundreds of these containers. These containers, not only do they protect against light, but they suck out oxygen when you put the lid back on. All right, you can put something in here, it's like Tutankhamun's tomb. It will preserve it. So if you had a leaf and you put it in something like this, it would last a lot longer than a year, because you're keeping it from the light, you're keeping it from the oxygen, you're protecting it with moisture and heat, and those are all the 4 things that will destroy a herb. All right. So if it's a root or a bark or berry, it will last about 5 years. All right. So if it's in a powdered root, it will last about 3 years. Okay, so leaves and roots, barks, and berries. Okay, so if if something is a flower or leaf, they're the most fragile when it comes to, oxidation and losing their pigmentation. Now, there are 3 specialized pieces of equipment you're going to need to test if a herb is good or not. One is your nose, one is your taste,
Sure.
one is your eyes. All right, so if it's lost its color, if it's lost its taste, all right, or if it's lost its odor, then it's lost its potency. And usually if you lose one, you lose the others. All right, so I was invited to speak at this lifestyle center, and I flew down there and I said, could I use your herbs when I come? And they said, sure. So I went down there and they had a whole kitchen full of herbs. And when I went into the kitchen, they had all these containers, and I opened them up and I couldn't even smell the herb. I said, ginger. I had to put it right next to my nose to even smell it. And I said, you better get rid of this. This is not, this is old. People are paying $5,000 to come here for a program, and they're getting herbs that don't do anything, So if you've been bequeathed, through your grandmother had bequeathed her will, and you find in the basement all these herbs that are left to you, then it's probably not going to be any good if it's over a year old. All right. So any questions on that? Any questions? Yes.
On the elderberry,
Yes.
like this,
Yes.
is it okay to eat the seed inside of the elderberry, or is that not a consumable?
The seed in the elderberry.
Like if I was to take that and make powder
Yeah,
out of it.
you can.
Okay.
Yeah, you can. Now, here's the thing. There's different kinds of elderberry. So, the American elderberry is a different. It's the same. How can I say it? Same family. It's just a different variety. So the one that we use is called Sambucus nigra. It's from Europe, and the one in America, it's similar as far as the constituents go, but it does have some cyanide in it. So you need to cook it. The cooking will denature the cyanide. So you can still eat it, but it's not advisable to eat it raw. Okay, so I know people that say, oh, we grew up eating this stuff all the time. Well, thankfully you're okay, but it's not enough to kill you, but it can cause you stomach upsets. All right, so I would get the European variety, and if you sourcing it from outside in the wild, then make sure you cook it. And make sure it is elderberry, because there are some lookalikes that are quite toxic. So you really got to make sure that you understand what you're getting. Right. So we put elderberry, for example, with another herb called echinacea and ginger. And if you've got a cold or upper respiratory tract infection, or you've got a flu, then elderberry works really well. It actually sabotages the adhesive enzyme that connects the virus to the phospholipid membrane of the cell, and so it stops the virus from actually injecting its viral matter in through the cell membrane. And ginger is what we use to help get rid of the virus, because the best way to get rid of a virus is actually sweating. In fact, if you start coming down with a cold virus, just go for a run. Drink lots of water, and probably you will actually get it out. Another thing you can do is a steam treatment. And if you've got one of those big black plastic garbage bags, just put a hole in the top and put it over your body, and you can sit down on the seat like this. You got to make sure you sit on a towel so you don't get burned, and you put a kettle, electric kettle, under your seat, and let the steam come up, and it surrounds your body, and it creates a sweat. And so that's one of the best ways to actually get a virus out of your system. Sweating. Yes?
Is that also effective for allergies? This time of the year, there's a lot of allergies.
The best thing for allergies is a herb called nettle. Stinging nettle. Urtica duacia, there's different species of nettle, but that's a common nettle. And it's, when you put your hand in nettle, it'll sting you, but if you dry it or cook it, it will actually activate antihistamine properties and it will take away the allergy it caused you. So it's amazing. It releases antihistamines in the body, and we've seen about probably 90% success rate with seasonal allergies using nettle.
Are the
Yes,
teas
you had it.
affected that way? Like a stinging nettle tea?
Yes, stinging nettle tea. Yes, it's very effective. Udi, you had it.
Some people mix it up with quercetin as well.
Quercetin, you can. You can use quercetin. Yes, I mean, just nettle of itself, I mean, I could tell you stories all day about people using nettle. But nettle is what we call tropho-restorative. It means it helps every body system. I was looking for whiteboard so I can write it. But it means it helps every system of the body. All right, so nettle is particularly helpful for ladies who have anemia. It builds up the blood. It's high in iron.
The nettle?
Nettle. It's got vitamin A, B, C, D, E, K, and P. It's very high in ACE, which are antioxidants. And it's also the highest in plant protein and iron. And it's full of minerals. And it's very good for, it's because it's high in vitamin A, it's very good for the eyes. It's very good for the immune system. It's good for the bladder, it's good for the kidneys. It's good for the skin, it's good for the hair. In fact, we've had people who've been completely bald, their hair's grown back just using nettle. Yeah.
Does that all come through in the tea, or do you have to actually
You can.
ingest the herb?
You can the tea, it's just, you're gonna need to take more of it. Usually people take it in an extract form, which is a liquid form, just like Udi has.
Okay, but you don't have to ingest the actual needle.
No. Well, okay, when
the
the
body.
Yeah, so when you, okay, so at the end of those leaves, you have little barbs and you have what's called formic acid. You know those little fire ants? They when they bite you, they give you formic acid and that creates a rash. Okay, so you can, by cooking the leaves, you actually denature the formic acid. So it's actually has a contrary effect to actually what it caused you. So it can give you a rash, but it'll take it away at the same time
So
if you took the medicine.
the best way to get it, what he's asking, is
Yeah.
in that form right there.
If you've got it in your backyard, use it. But you just have to take higher amounts of it. For example, like when you have extracts, like these ones in particular, they've been cooked for days. So that really, really concentrates it. Whereas when you take it as a tea, you're getting a weaker solution. But you can still do that, you just have to take more tea, right? So you take
The
several
point was,
cups.
you don't eat the plant itself.
Yes,
You take
that's
the
right. You're
extract
taking,
or the tea,
that's right, you're just
the
doing a tea.
liquid that's extracted from it, not the actual body of the plant.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Now you can take, actually the leaf, you can eat it, but the thing is, herbs they benefit us by the heating process, and here's why. Because when you heat a leaf, it swells the leaf, and it ruptures the cellulose membrane, and releases the contents in there, into the water. Whereas it's harder to do that when you're eating the leaves themselves. So the body relies on hydrochloric acid for extraction rather than an infusion. So when you do a tea, you're doing an infusion. All right, and that's why we do, a 6-minute brew that's all it takes, those contents from the leaf into the water, right? Whereas if you're using a root or a bark, you're doing what's called a decoction, where you bring it to a boil like rice, and then you simmer it for 20 minutes. But when you have a thin membrane, like a leaf, you don't need to cook it so much. It just takes boiling hot water and then steeping for a few minutes to achieve the same result.
Thank you.
So yeah, we've had people I had this guy one time came in my store and he was completely bald. He was in his 30s and he just took some nettle and came back about 2 months later, and And I knew him, but I just couldn't put a finger on it. You know how you meet some people, and I thought there's something different. And all his hair grew back from using that. He said, have you got anything for the beard? He said, my beard is not growing as fast as my hair is growing. And then I helped him with something for his beard. But and one other time I had this truck driver call me. He was ordering stuff for his hair, and I said, how's it going? And he said, great. He said, my hair's grown fully back. And I said, well, what was it like before? And he said, it's completely bald. And I said, can you send me a before and after picture? And he only sent me an after picture, but his hair was like Einstein, sticking out everywhere. I said, you better stop taking that stuff. But yeah, we've had a lot of people. Actually, I got into making something for the hair because we were helping ladies with their thyroid, actually. And as many of you know, when your thyroid suffers, your hair actually falls out, and that's usually because of the high cortisol levels. And so we were helping ladies with their thyroid, and their hair was growing back. And so that sort of led me into study, and that showed me that these herbs actually have some basis of why they do what they do. So that was good to know. Yeah, elderberry is great if you're looking to help anyone. Now, I'm not saying it's a cure for COVID. Only FDA can say that, right? But I could say this: if I had COVID, I would take elderberry.
I had COVID and I did take it.
I did take it. Okay, good. So
I'm here.
you survived. Well, look at that.
And I took elderberries to keep from getting it.
Okay, very good. Yeah, there is a war against information on right now, and the truth can stand up to scrutiny, but lies can't. And so, anytime you get censorship of information, it's often because some people's interests are conflicted with false information that they're trying to put out there. So feel free to, I want people to scrutinize me and to ask me questions. There's no problem. And we don't have a monopoly on the truth, right? I mean, we're all learning. I mean, I'm learning every day new things, and you probably know things that I didn't know about certain herbs, and so feel free to share your expertise. So yes.
I just wanted to, well, maybe it's not the right time.
Oh, okay. Okay, we'll have a Q&A
I
at
had
the
a
end.
question, yeah.
You sure?
Something's
Oh, you want it off
something's
live
telling me
screen?
it's not the
Okay,
right
it's not the right
yeah.
time. Okay,
So
no
I'm gonna
problem.
listen to the voice.
That's fine, man. That's fine. Yeah, let's move on to some herbs that can really help if you just want to take it for nutritional support. Now, I know a lot of people they take supplements, and I'm not against taking supplements, but I think as far as possible, it's always better to get supplements that are the closest to what nature produces.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's why Udi makes all these lovely microgreens, right? So you want people to get from the whole plant. So I'm a big promoter of that. There's no food that God has made that is all one thing, or calcium, or vitamin C, or magnesium. It's all a composite. And it's beautifully knit together in a way that no one could even figure it out. And that creates synergy. That creates better harmony for digestion and utilization. And there's no scientist that could even figure out how three things actually interact with each other. We're still at the 2 level. In fact, the drugs sometimes studied for their reaction to other drugs, but they only usually go to 2. They don't go to 3. Once you get beyond 2, it's too complex, right? I always tell people it takes more than a good soprano to make a choir, and it takes more than a good phytochemical to make a good medicine. All right, now herbs are not categorized by the FDA as medicines. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Because they're not poisonous in nature, and they don't create side effects. That's the reason. So to
That's
be a
good
medicine,
reason. That's a good reason.
to be a medicine, according
You have to be.
according to the powers to be, it has to produce side effects.
Yeah.
And it has to be poisonous
Poisonous.
in nature. Have mercy.
Mm.
Have mercy. Okay. Alright. Yes, and we're living in an age where things have new definitions that we never had before for thousands of years. All right, so, but if you prescribe a herb, you are practicing medicine without a license. Get that? If any of you could figure that out, please see me afterwards. I'd be interested to find out. All right, so so there are certain herbs you can take ongoing for nutritional support, right? And these are things we call nutritive tonics. So those are things high in minerals and vitamins and phytochemistry. So this would be a good example of this, right? All right, so things like alfalfa, things like wheatgrass, things like spirulina, right? Alfalfa, oat straw, nettle is one of them as well. And they're very high in concentrated nutritional needs. So those are things you can take on an ongoing basis. So people sometimes ask me, how long do I need to be on this? And I say, as long as you need to be. So when the problem corrects itself, you don't need to stay on it forever, right? Just like you break a leg and you have a crutch, and once that's fixed up, you don't need the crutch anymore. So I would say this, that herbs are not a substitute for poor lifestyle habits. We have to get to the cause. They're an adjunct therapy to a good lifestyle. If you have a good lifestyle, the herbs work better because they're not constantly battling the abuse that you give in the body, all right? And so they'll work in harmony with the body's physiological needs. So just be aware of that, because some people use herbs as others would use drugs. And, you know, like instead of taking a pill for every pill, they'll take a herb for everything, but they won't ascertain why have I got this in the first place and get to the cause and then change that and use it intelligently until their body is back to normal. So I'm a big believer in finding out the root of the problem instead of just trying to put a Band-Aid on certain things. And one of the problems that we face in our society is that unfortunately every medication that man has made creates nutritional deficiencies, because it requires nutritional resources from the body to turn it into a metabolite, right, where the body can use it as medicine, and then it takes nutrition to get that drug out of the body, to escort it out, to get rid of it. Whereas herbs that God has given us, and I'm not saying every herb is safe, don't get me wrong, but we're going to use herbs that are safe and that are effective. Herbs, what they do is that they give back to the body what the body has been robbed of. So you think of an antioxidant, for example, has an extra electron, right? Did they teach you that in biology class?
Nope.
Okay, has an extra electron that it can donate, and it can stabilize free radicals, and it can prevent disease in the body. So that's the beauty of herbs. Like it says in Psalms 104 verse 14, God gave the herb for the service of men. The word service means ministry. It's giving. It's giving, right? So when you see people giving to you, how do you feel? You feel good, right? You feel good, and you want in turn minister to others. And so, but when you feel robbed, you don't feel very good, right? Yeah. So what the herbs do is they give back, they're supplying back to the body what has been robbed from the body. You know, and that's the beauty. I see how God has made these things. You know, God is always in the business of healing. You know, wherever there's sickness, there's a savior. And anytime you cut the body instantly goes about to repair itself. Instantly. It's amazing. You know, where sin abounds, grace does much more abound. It's a physiological law. And so anytime you get disease, it's actually a it's now a stage set for God to kick in His agencies to recover us from that process. And that's what I love about the herbs, is because they're constantly giving. You know, I tell people herbs are like Jesus. They're often the last resort when nothing else has worked. Right? They're within the reach of everyone. They're universally accessible. And it just sometimes takes a little faith to avail ourselves of them. And science is still trying to figure out how they work. All right, so, okay. So you can use herbs for nutritional support, and those are what we call nutritive tonics. Okay, now there are other classes of herbs that can help in different needs, with different needs. Now, I'll just share this with you because this covers probably every chronic disease known to man. You can help if you understand this principle. Every chronic disease has one thing in common. Can anyone tell me?
Sugar.
Sugar? Close.
Lifestyle. They're
It's-
caused by lifestyle.
That's
One.
definitely close. Yes. They're all inflammatory. Even depression is inflammatory, right? So anytime you got inflammation, you can offset that by anti-inflammatories, right? So one of the best things that we use for inflammation is turmeric. It's like gold. I mean, it's some people think, you know, the wise men that bought frankincense and myrrh, some think that the gold was actually turmeric. It was probably as expensive as gold. It's got a little cheaper over time, but yeah, turmeric is fantastic because it's so good to help with the blood. It's a blood thinner, and it also helps if you've got any, especially with the GI tract and cancer in particular. You got some turmeric there? Okay. All right. So there we go. I didn't even know you had the powdered turmeric there. All right. Thank you, my son. So turmeric is powerful. It's something you can take on a regular basis. It has more studies been done on turmeric than any other herb known to man. In fact, any other medicine known to man. You know, the top medicine that has been studied is a press, and it's had over 280 studies done on it. There are about 30% of drugs right now that are not having any clinical studies done and are being passed. 30%. Right? Now, so some people sometimes say, you know, Lee, the herbs have not really been studied and double-blind studied, research like drugs, and this is actually the opposite. The herbs that we use have more studies done on them than medications that you find in the store. And we're talking at least hundreds of studies.
Could you expand on that a little bit? Because
Sure.
that's a very common argument.
Yes,
And where are these studies and what?
Where are other studies? Yeah, you don't have to go far. It's just where you can type in the information. But PubMed's a good source. Okay, Stanford database, Duke University. There are a lot of studies done in Europe that because they're in German or something, they not necessarily all translated into English. You've got a lot of monograms that have been published in Germany, for example, on different herbs that we don't have books per se in English, but there are definitely major clinical studies been done on herbs. You just have to look for them. It's just that most people don't have knowledge of necessarily where to go to find them, and this is one of the big problems. Is that the average person that reads from articles that are published actually have been published through drug companies. So let me explain this. 78% of all clinical studies done on herbs are from drug companies. 78%. So let's like put in the fox in charge of the hen house. Okay. So, because it's their biggest competitor, right? So herbs aren't as expensive, but they are definitely not as financially profitable as our medications are. So, 20 cents out of the dollar in America goes to the medical industry in some form, whether it be doctors or hospitals, drug companies, equipment, whatever. It's a huge amount that's going over there. Now, herbs are the fastest growing industry in the alternative medicine side of things. So it is definitely taking off, and especially in the times we're living in where people are looking for not just a one-sided approach to medicine as we've been pushed on the last few years. They're looking for alternative, actually really, you could say that the alternatives that we have today are modern medicine, because it's alter to nature, native, right? Because it's not compatible with nature. Because drugs, they don't, in most cases, cure disease. What they do is they change the form and location of that disease. So you get a headache, you take a Tylenol, well, the headache will go away because the body's going to send more blood from the brain to the stomach to help get rid of the drug. And then it creates a stomach ulcer. And now you need another drug for the stomach ulcer, and then the stomach ulcer clears up, and then you end up with a kidney infection. So you take a sulfur drug for that, and your kidney infection goes away, but then 6 months later your liver enzymes elevate and you end up with needing a liver transplant. So, this is the problem. We can't take the Band-Aid approach. You can't poison yourself back to health. It doesn't work. We've been conditioned and trained over the course of our lifetime to do things that are completely inverse to reality. Now, you can deny reality, but you can't deny the effects of reality, right? You can deny that gravity exists, but you try to jump off a building to fly, and you'll still feel the effects of that. So we're living in an age where things are absolutely back to front, upside down, as never before. So we've got to start thinking more for ourselves, because we've had the last few years of what we call mass formation psychosis, right? Where everyone follows the crowd because we want to be part of the herd, and we don't want to think for ourselves so much. But anyway, it pays to do some research, do your own investigation, and don't believe everything I say. Just check it out, and please ask questions, because this is how we learn. So, getting back to some of the herbs that could really help. Sorry, you had a question?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to dominate.
No, you're fine.
Regarding turmeric,
Yes.
I've read and heard that there's a substance in black pepper that enhances the turmeric, makes it more effective.
That's called piperine.
Yes.
Okay, now, let me explain why people recommend this, okay, and why I don't recommend this.
Okay. Well, that's
So,
good.
So the theory is you take black pepper with turmeric. Now, many people confuse turmeric for curcumin. Now, just to explain, curcumin is an isolate from turmeric. It's a phytochemical they've isolated from turmeric that they believe is the primary anti-inflammatory agent out of turmeric. So when the body gets the curcumin ingested, when you take curcumin orally, then because the curcumin is an isolate, it degrades very quickly by the liver. The liver will process and clear that out of the body in 20 minutes. So in order to stop that from happening, black pepper is introduced because the chemical piperine in black pepper suppresses the liver's action to metabolize curcumin. and so thereby suspending curcumin in the body for a longer period of time and increasing bioavailability. Those are the two main reasons. Okay, but here's the but. If you take the turmeric whole, you don't need black pepper because it's got all the other isolates in there, all the other chemicals in there to help facilitate better absorption and slow release. So it's not cleared out by the liver in just 20 minutes. It's sustainable for several hours, and you don't need black pepper. Now, if you do add a little bit of cayenne pepper,
Yes.
that would be better because black pepper is a gastric irritant. It's a gastric irritant. Whereas in cayenne pepper, now I do not recommend you take cayenne pepper in large amounts by itself.
Mhm.
You want to take, the best way to take cayenne pepper is actually with a meal. Because if it's too concentrated in a dry form, just taking that, it can upset the stomach and it can irritate the stomach. But if you take it with the actual food, it's not going to be a problem. Yes.
That's a good question. I was stumped by that question for a long time, and I did some research on it. And every article that I was getting, peer review as it relates to, herbal approaches where turmeric, black pepper, turmeric, and I said, this can't be because black pepper is an irritant to the GI system. And I actually did find an article that says turmeric, what most people give it for is for inflammation, but
Right.
the black pepper, the notion is that it will exacerbate the effect, or it will agitate it even more to give it a better effect. But then I did find one article that says that the turmeric is activated by heat. And so they had recommended cayenne pepper to activate the turmeric. It's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all. Most people think it has to be black pepper.
Yes, that's right.
It doesn't, because black pepper is an irritant to the gut. And so I was happy to find that article that backed up. It's just the heat that needs to activate it. It's not needed, but you can activate it with cayenne as well.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Yes, now, I was going to mention something. What was it? With the cayenne pepper. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So, if you took the curcumin out of turmeric and you take the rest of the turmeric without the curcumin, it's still anti-inflammatory. All right. So it's not just curcumin you need. All right. So turmeric is that's the whole thing, right? It's got thousands of chemicals in turmeric. And how do we know the plays and counterplays of all those working together? We don't. So I'd rather just take the whole thing, and you can trust the one who made it knows how it works in our body. So just don't worry about the black pepper, but if you want to use some cayenne is constituents are different than black pepper. And herbs generally can be benefited by taking a little bit of cayenne as well, because whenever you speed up blood flow, which cayenne does, it speeds up blood flow, you increase bioavailability of those chemicals from the herbs through the body. So you have greater exchange of nutrition, faster exchange. We have more active, what they call active transport in the cells, and it just works more effectively. All right, so often our formulas we use with a little bit of cayenne pepper.
So then what is the final take on the curcumin? Is that okay, or?
I personally, it's my opinion, I think it's better to take the turmeric as a whole than try to take an isolate. Now it still will work, and it's anti-inflammatory. It will work, but I just feel it's actually, they've done studies on this, comparing curcumin with black pepper to turmeric by itself. And as far as effect go, the turmeric was just as good as the curcumin, if not better.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, if you can get the root itself, that's even better, the fresh.
Yeah, no, here's one problem. I don't want to take the whole time out just on turmeric, but most turmeric, over 99% of turmeric has some lead in it.
Mm.
Now, this isn't a big concern unless you're taking turmeric on an ongoing basis. So, there's no lead sprayed on turmeric. It's just that the turmeric plant has an affinity for taking lead out of the soil. And so, that's the problem. So if you take as turmeric tea or juice, where you extract the lead actually gets bound to the fiber. So if you take the juice, tea, or an extract, you don't have the lead in there. So that's a benefit over taking, say, the powder, unless you're sure that the powder is good quality, which I'm sure yours is good. It's better if it's organic.
Organic.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then you can add it to smoothies.
But organic is mainly the pesticides and things, it's not the soil, right?
I
The
know.
lead could still be in the soil.
I know, but there are some that the people that generally do the organic are more concerned about the lead
Okay.
in the soil.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, good question.
Yeah, so as far as isolates, I don't know how often they're packaged and sold, but is there a general way to identify isolates? Because I would imagine anyway, it's always better to get it more holistic. So
Yeah.
is it proper to try to avoid all isolates and try to find it whole?
I wouldn't say there's never a place for isolates, but usually there's no need. I mean, it's like you take, for example, say aspirin. So aspirin is from white willow. So, all right, the salicylic acid, which is from aspirin, it's an isolate, and it will get rid of your headache, but it will cause stomach bleeding as well. So if you took it in the white willow bark, you would have to take more white willow to get the same effect, but it won't cause the stomach issues that aspirin will, right? So generally I don't see a need for it. There may be specific cases where perhaps it may be necessary, but
Right.
I'd say that would be a very rare situation.
Because normally within, let's say white willow,
Yes,
it has the components that will give balance
that's right.
to
That's right.
that. Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, that is one of the arguments about it, the standardized dosage.
I
How do
know
you
that.
standardize the dose
Yes.
of a teaspoon of turmeric?
Well, I'll address that. It's a
Okay.
good question
Thank you.
because this is, if I was in a room full of doctors, this would be their question. Okay. So I would say this to them. Well, first I would agree with them that anytime you get a herb growing, whether it be turmeric or ginger or elderberry, even if it's from the same plant at different points of growth, it will have different amounts of concentrated elements in there. Okay, but this is what I would say, that if you have an excess of something, the body will metabolize it and it will still do its job. There is a certain point where we have therapeutic range, right? So it's beyond placebo, and then it goes up to maximum allowance. So usually it's between 1 to 3 servings a day. All right, so you will get variety. You will get variation, even from the same batch of herbs. You're going to get different concentrations. Have you ever taken off, done a soil test in your ground and send it off to 3 different labs, and you get 3 different results, and it's from the same spot that you send it? And then what will happen is they'll say you need X amount of potassium increase, X amount of magnesium and manganese and zinc and whatever, and they'll give you different recommendations. And the reason being is because they have different specifications of what they think you need in your soil. They have a different yardstick. All right, so why I'm bringing that out is because it's impossible to know how much of each thing our body needs. So if it's impossible to know how much of each thing your body needs, then if you get at least a right balanced proportion with all the other phytochemicals, you have a better chance of getting some degree of success than trying to work out on an isolate that will metabolize very quickly in your body and get rid of very quickly and create imbalances, because every isolate will create an imbalance. If you took too much of one mineral, it will always create another imbalance with another mineral, right? But if you get an excess through nature, it will actually get rid of the excess in a very gentle manner. For example, if you get vitamin D, all right? So let's say you get your vitamin D levels are off the charts. They're like 100, and that's like max level. And you keep going out in the sun because you're a farmer and you like to work outside. Well, if your body doesn't need that excess, it will metabolize and get rid of it. It will store what it needs, and then the excess it will get rid of. All right, but it's not going to hurt you. You see, so as long as you get enough of the herb, what is an excess will be dispensed of very easily. The body will get rid of it. All right, as long as you get enough of, those properties that are going to initiate a healthy response. So my answer to that would be that, my question would be, how do you know that the amount that you're giving is the amount that they need? How can you know that? Because everyone's physiology is different. Don't you, as a physician, you change your medication from person to person, and even the same person, you may say 2 weeks later, double up on your dose, because it's not an exact science. Medicine is not an exact science, and it's the same with plant chemistry. It's not an exact science. So instead of trying to come up with greater ways to test out things and what they should have, I would say, well, let's just let nature do a work and just make sure they get enough to create an action, what they need. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like if, and this is where it comes back to dosage again, is, your body will tell you what it needs. So I have people that, for example, they can't sleep. And so I put them on a sleep formula, and they may say, I'm sleeping a little bit better, but I'm not really where I want to be. So I tell them, look, double the dosage. Try that for 3 days and see if that helps you any. So they double the dosage, and they may say, it did improve, but I'm only getting 6 hours sleep. I really want to get 8 hours sleep. And then, sometimes, and this is not for everything, okay? But sometimes I even double it again. I say, I would double the dose and see if that gets back to normal. Because, you see, you can't do that with a medication. You can't, double and then double again. Usually you can maybe double. In some medication, you can't even add 50% on. But sometimes the max is double, right? But then to double it again, see, with a herb, it's very forgiving. It's very, very forgiving. Let me tell you this. How many people do you think died from herbs in the last 12 months in North America?
None. 0.
How many people do you think took herbs? How many supplements? If you could get bottles, right? These have got capsules. And pile all the capsules in one room. How many do you think you'd end up with that we consume in the United States? Out of 360 million people in 1 year. So it's a lot. It's I'll save you the trouble of trying to work it out. It's about 60 billion supplements consumed in the United States. Someone's having my share. So 60 billion. The last report we have from the Poison Control Center was 0 deaths.
Thank you.
0 deaths from 60 billion supplements consumed in the United States, largely herbal supplements. Okay. That seems like a pretty good statistic, wouldn't you think? Now, there have been some deaths in the past from herbs. You know what they're from?
Mm-hmm. What?
They're from, have a guess.
THC?
No. They're from weight loss products and energy formulas. Two largest cause of death in the herbal field. And you know what both of them spiked with? Caffeine. You know, caffeine causes about 4.5 million ER visits every year in the United States alone. Caffeine. Yeah, you do not put caffeine with things that affect energy. It's a bad combination. No, you don't do that. I can count on one hand the side effects I've seen from herbs, from people who bought herbs from us over the course of the history of the time I've been involved with herbs. In fact, I can only think of 3, and one was with the same herb. It was ginseng root. Now, ginseng, you have to be careful because it's a stimulant, and it's very similar to caffeine, but it doesn't have the negatives of caffeine. It's not addictive. It's not going to, give you the jitters. It's not going to keep you up at night unless you take it before you go to bed. Then this is a stimulant. But I had one lady. She had some tachycardia. She took too much insulin. She was doing well. She thought a little was good, a lot was better. So she doubled it up and didn't take my advice, and she ended up with some tachycardia. It was short-lived. It was nothing serious. And I had another lady did the same thing, but she was very sensitive to herbs, and so it was, even on a low dose, gave her some tachycardia. So, and then the other one I saw was a rash on the face from a bipolar medication that was taken at the same time. So, so that was 3 instances. And other than that, maybe a little gastric, like indigestion or gas or something. Very, very minor stuff. Yes.
I heard of someone who took some ginkgo biloba for circulatory, just to increase circulation, and he said that he had tachycardia, low tachycardia as a result of it. That was the first time I heard that, but he said,
I've never had anyone had tachycardia from ginkgo. Ginkgo is often used, by the way, for brain health.
Yeah.
All right. So I used to live right next door to Andrews University, and we would walk through the campus there, and it was funny. I sort of felt like God had a sense of humor because right outside of the theology department was a ginkgo tree, and there was another one. Ginkgo was right outside the psychology department. There was another ginkgo tree, and they knew nothing about it. But it's very good to increase circulation through the brain. So, how much time have we got? So I just want to make sure we got time. So, let me go over some of the things that you brought to the floor here. Was thyroidism, hypothyroidism. Deal with a lot of ladies who have hypothyroidism, and the predominant cause, not the only cause, but the predominant cause of low thyroid function is stress. So here's what most people don't know. When a lady has a lot of stress before menopause, it really affects her when she hits into menopause, because the adrenals actually supply 30% of the sex hormones. So when a lady transitions into menopause and the ovaries stop releasing those sex hormones, then the adrenals kick in and they help transition her smoothly into menopause. But if he's had a lot of stress, then the adrenals can't cope, and they don't assist the body in giving those sex hormones as they would have normally done, and so you end up with this emotional roller coaster. It's biochemical as well. I mean, it really can affect the lady. So one of the things that I have seen that really helps a lady with hypothyroidism is using some adaptogenic herbs. So those are things like ashwagandha and rhodiola. Those are the top two herbs I'd recommend for
What's the second one? I'm sorry.
ashwagandha
Yeah, that one.
and rhodiola. Okay. So you have some.
We have ashwagandha.
Yeah, you have some adrenal support. So those two are in there, and so that helps mitigate the cortisol levels. It reduces the inflammation. It also improves and enhances your ability to resist stress. And see, when the cortisol goes high, then it affects the T3 conversion, and it also sabotages the interleukins. There's actually 5 pathways where the adrenal glands pull down the thyroid gland. It's all done through the stress response through the sympathetic nervous system. Yes?
So people may not know what T3 and
T3, yeah,
and all
T3
of
and
that
T4 are hormones that are released from the thyroid gland. Thank you, Yudi. They're thyroid hormones that are involved in metabolism, in energy, and so this often leads to reduction in cell metabolism, a reduction in energy. That's why we often get fatigue, right? So, and you know, adrenal fatigue is a real thing. I know many doctors for years were denying that this thing even exists. It's all in your mind, but it's actually a real condition. So we have 3 stages of stress. We have the fight or flight, then we have the adaptive, and then we have the exhaustive. All right. So fight or flight, you know, it's like you're just walking through the woods and you see this slimy thing wiggle. All right. So that's the fight or flight. Your pupils dilate. You take deep breaths. You're getting ready. You know, your body releases sugar, and you're getting ready to run or fight. That's your fight or flight. But then, you know, you have a snake chase you for a few miles, or you're living with snakes. I remember in Australia, there's certain places that have thousands of snakes per acre. We used to live in. I mean, I've had snakes in my bedroom and snakes in my kitchen, come up between my legs while I was playing golf, and wrapped around my arm, and I had a big one this fat come up towards me, and anyway, so I've seen a lot of snakes. It doesn't actually worry me so much because I'm sort of grew up with it. But if you're never used to them, it could give you a heart attack, right? It's for one person, that snake may give him a heart attack. The other person, they may see it. This is a nice pet, right? So the snake hasn't changed. It's your perception has changed. So what you're afraid of, you're wired for, can create just as much stress someone else can enjoy that experience, right? So it's to do with our perception. What immediately impacts me? What is a threat to me? And that could be a person, could be your work, could be anything, right? Whatever causes that stress. But when we live with it long enough, it becomes what we call adaptive stress, right? So, like I flew to California, and before I entered LA, you're flying through the smog. It looks like clouds, but it's smog. But when you're in there, you don't see the smog anymore because you're so used to it, right? So think of it as the adaptive stage of stress is like being in the fog, and you're just accustomed to it. It's just part of life. But then over time, and this happens over years, you hit a stage of called exhaustive stage of stress, when the body can no longer sustain your response to that stress. All right, and then the body collapses. It puts you on the bed. It it just wipes you out. You can't even get out of bed sometimes. That's the exhaustive stage of stress. What's it, the Hand Seal, he's the world's leading expert in this, and he studied this phenomena. And for years, you know, people were slow to catch on to this, but finally, you know, over time, it became more acceptable that stress has a great amount of impact upon our adrenal glands. And the adrenals are very closely connected with the thyroid gland. And so usually what happens is the adrenals go first, and then the thyroid goes next. And that takes years, usually takes years. And then that affects the sex hormones. That affects the moods. That affects the sleep. That affects the weight. You know, and it's just a domino effect. In fact, I've done hundreds of consultations with nurses, and you know, I tell people, you tell me how long you've been a nurse, and I'll tell you your symptoms, because it's just so, it's a pattern. You see it constantly, this pattern. But it can be improved. It can be reversed, especially you know, when you get it early enough. The trouble is this: when people hit the exhaustive stage of stress, and you offer certain herbs to help them, sometimes they feel better and they think they are better. All right, meaning this, that because they have some improvement, their body tricks their brain to think, well, I'm okay now, and then they use up their reserves. It's a bit like going to the bank and you've just spent $1 million on a credit card, and then the bank lets you know we're going to give you an extra $2,000 bonus for being a good customer you can use with your credit card, and you forget that you're in debt $1,002,000. Okay, so the worst thing to do when your adrenals go is to use up the little reserve you had left. You want to keep that reserve, because when that reserve runs out, you've got nothing to get you back on again. You got no energy to get you functioning again, and that's when the brain starts shutting down. That's when, you know, people are laid on their bed for sometimes months at a time. I knew a gentleman, he just stared at the ceiling for 18 months.
Wow.
He only got up just to go to the bathroom.
So what do I do?
Oh, look, there's good news. So, this is the good news, is we can do something about it. So you got to reduce the inflammation. This is where turmeric comes in. This is where rhodiola comes in, ashwagandha comes in. All right, and having a good lifestyle. That's the key, right? So now also with certain people who have low thyroid function, they need to also think about taking some iodine. All right, because iodine is what is used by the body to be involved in making T3, T4, and involved in metabolism. So iodine is essential. We personally, even though I don't have a thyroid issue, I personally take some iodine. We take nascent iodine or atomic iodine. There's different kinds of iodine that you can take. Atomic iodine is where they drill through the seabed like 12,000 feet under the ocean, and they get these crystals, fluoride crystals, and they make them into an extract. And so that's what we use. We use the pure atomic iodine. Yes?
Someone in the store had a question. She wanted to know if the herbs or the extract was better to use when it comes to you know, the stinging nettle and other things. She wanted to know what was best.
Well, the best way to get a herb in your body is either a tea or an extract, because it doesn't require any digestion. Okay, there's no enzymes. So if you take one of these, for example, okay, this will go straight in your bloodstream. You don't need digestion. You don't need hydrochloric acid. You don't need any of that. Okay, but you take some powder, then that's another story. the body has to heat it up. It has to extract it. So how does it do that? It releases hydrochloric acid, stomach acid. It's largely water, but it's acidic, and then it pulls the properties out that way. So if you have weak acid, for example, you're not going to get so much benefit by taking it as a powder. And if you take it at the wrong time of the day, then you're not going to get much benefit either. So, lastly, I recommend people take as a tea or an extract. Now, there are some examples, some exceptions to that rule, right? So, if you're going to make a smoothie, for example, you could put some turmeric in a smoothie. That would be fine. If you take a capsule, and this is just my personal view on it, the best things to take as capsules are bitter herbs. So that's generally the only thing I recommend as a capsule. If you can't get it down any other way, you could try a capsule around mealtime. Okay, so the body will break that down. Because bitter herbs, you can't make them taste good, right? I mean, how can you make gentian root taste good?
Buckthorn.
Honey.
Anyone make golden seal taste good? I mean, it's tough.
Dandelion.
So that's the way we get around it. Now, glycerin is sweet, so it makes it taste better. We don't use any alcohol when we formulate extracts, because alcohol they use is, first it's from GMO corn. It's between 80 to 180% proof from vodka. And 180% proof, 1 tablespoon, it's like drinking a whole can of beer. And that's strong enough. It will knock grandma off a rocking chair, that stuff. I mean, it's powerful. So, and plus it's toxic. It will dry out the tissues of the body. It creates liver damage. I mean, alcohol is toxic. So I don't recommend alcohol in any form to take in the body.
Is an extract different than a tincture?
Well, yeah, it's a good
One uses
question.
alcohol?
So, yeah, tincture, yes, that's right. So tincture technically is alcohol-based. So if it's got glycerin like these wouldn't be technically classed as a tincture. It'll be an extract. Now, extracts that have alcohol often put in that category of both, either a tincture or an extract, whereas a glyceride is only an extract. Have I confused you all?
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's a tincture, it technically is alcohol.
So should those be avoided then in favor of the extracts?
Well, I personally would just recommend glycerides. Glyceride extracts, that's what I would recommend. And glycerin is usually from palm or non-GMO soy or coconut.
Yeah, some folks had the question about the glycerin. I think maybe there is some confusion about, what it is. So
Okay,
if
yeah.
you can clarify that, because,
Okay, sure.
there
So
are some questions about that.
okay, so glycerin is what is separated from fatty acids, and so it's hydrolyzed. It's put under pressure by water to separate that from the fatty acids. Now it is sweet, all right, but it's not all things that are sweet are sugar.
Yeah.
All right, so licorice is sweet, but it's not sugar. Stevia is sweet, but it's not sugar. My wife's sweet, but she's not making sugar. Anyway, so so it does taste sweet. So often people think it's sweet. It's got sugar, but it doesn't have sugar in it. And it's very easy to metabolize. It's non-toxic to the body. It's actually a nutrient. It's categorized as a nutrient by the body. And I've had very good results with it. So some people argue, though, that alcohol will get out certain things that glycerin won't get out. So let me qualify that. Alcohol does get out certain things that are not glycerin, but predominantly it's not anything that you want in your body. So for example, toxic alkaloids. toxic alkaloids you won't get out through glycerin, but you'll get them out through alcohol. So caffeine is a toxic alkaloid. Morphine, cocaine, these are very toxic. Not all alkaloids are toxic. Like there's berberine in golden seal, for example, that's not toxic. But these alkaloids, they generally affect the nervous system, and they actually lower the body's ability, or should I say, they suppress the central nervous system function. And so I don't believe that they're needed. Now the drug companies love them because toxic alkaloids are what they make billions of dollars in every year, right? So, but no one's worried about that, are they? You know, the biggest cause of death between 18 and 45-year-olds is fentanyl. Fentanyl kills more people in that age group than anything else. And it's just come out of the borders all the time. It's a big, big industry. So you don't have to worry about that if you use glycerin, which is a blessing. So let me cover some other conditions. Just remind me, sugar. Someone asked about sugar. So diabetes. Okay, now, there are some herbs that can be very supportive of blood sugar. Okay, one of which is a herb called bitter melon. Bitter melon. All right. Another herb that can be used is gymnema. Gymnema. G-Y-M-N-E-M-A. Gymnema. Or Gymnema sylvestri is the full name. Okay, and that will improve insulin sensitivity. And there's another herb called fenugreek. Fenugreek is extremely good. It has a chemical called 4-hydroxyisoleucine. It stimulates the pancreas to produce more beta cells. And it also has a mucilaginous substance that coats the GI and slows down the transit time of sugar in the body. So those are very good combination.
What was that last one again?
Fenugreek. Fenugreek seed. There's Ceylon cinnamon as well, which you have in your cinnamon buns. There's another herb that's called cedar berries. Now, I want to be careful how I tell you this story because I don't want anyone to go off their insulin and dump it for these berries. But I would say this, because I had a lady came in my store one time. She was a nurse practitioner. She had a 9-year-old daughter that was diabetic type 1. Type 1. And I was surprised she wasn't using insulin. In fact, I mentioned it to her that maybe you should look at getting insulin because she had been diabetic for 3 years. And she started tearing up, and I thought, oh, I hit a pretty delicate spot there. So I said to her, look, I don't know if this will help you, but I heard from another herbalist that cedar berries can be helpful for certain situations, like type 1. So I wasn't telling her, I was encouraging her to go on insulin, but I said, you know, if you're not wanting to do that, at least maybe this may help. I didn't know if it would help. So she took these little cedar berries. They're very small, they're about this big, and they're hard. You have to put it in your mouth and sort of masticate a little. It'll soften it over a few minutes, and then you sort of clench it in the back of your teeth and just slowly get the juice from it. It's got a seed in the middle. Anyway, her blood sugar levels were about 300 normally, right? Which you know is not the best. So she came back, a week later she came back, and she had a big smile on her face, and she showed me her numbers, and it was average of 140. And she said, these two places here, these 2 times she cheated. She didn't have them, and they went up again. And I said, praise God, just keep doing what you're doing. And so she came back another 2 weeks later, and she got it down to like 110. And then she came back another week later. She got it as low as in the 80s. And I thought, wow, this just absolutely floored me, because I had no expectation that this was gonna bring things back to normal. And anyone watching online, I say this: do not go off medication. But this is the case, because I have recommended this as well for type 2 diabetes.
Is that the same kind of cedar that grows here?
No, it's not. The one you want to get is if you go to Mountain Rose Herbs, and you type in cedar berries. There are different types of cedar berries, but they're the cedar berry that.
Is this cedar like the tree?
Yes.
Like the cedar tree?
That's right, but not all cedar trees are the ones that.
But it's spelled the same.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, that worked really well. Those are the 5 herbs I would recommend for to lower the blood sugar. All right. Yes,
I've had a lot of success with okras.
Okras,
Blood sugar.
yes, okras.
Just because
I wish
there's
I
a
liked
lot of
okras.
okras in this area.
We used to grow okras, but I hated them.
And I've had a lady came here. She was probably in the 400s,
Okay.
and she took some okras for 2 days, and she was amazed how she came back. And she was like, "This is my number." I went down to 100s. She had driven from cross country, I think, for like a week. She was heavily stressed.
Yeah.
And also, there's some success with. There's many herbs, right?
Yes.
With moringa.
Moringa, yes.
Yes.
Moringa. We used to
With
grow
blood sugar,
moringa
too.
in our backyard.
Yeah.
And how is the okra prepared? Is it eaten raw?
Well, you want to fry it. That's number one, because you will denature. So she basically boiled it. She the okra, kind of not too boil. You don't want to boil it too much.
Just
And then
blanch
she
it.
drank the actual liquid of it. Okra is also very soothing to the GI
That's
system.
right.
Any GI peptic ulcer issue, you take the okras.
Yes. Yes. Anything mucilaginous you want to take for the GI system, right? So that would be things like slippery elm, aloe vera, things like marshmallow root, things that are just slimy herbs.
Yeah.
Okra
Now, would the
is one of
okra
those.
be effective raw, or does it need to be cooked to mitigate some of the other things?
Either way, I mean,
Smoothie it too. raw.
yeah. I mean, it's not going to destroy the
If you harvest
mucilaginous.
okra
Oh, they're great.
and the pods
Yeah,
are small,
right, the
you
small
know,
ones
they're
are
really
great.
soft.
Yeah,
But here in the South, they like to fry 'em.
Yeah, frying is not
When
the
you're
best.
frying, you're
I
destroying
wouldn't
the
fry,
with Tigric, yeah,
Yeah.
but
The-
just
the raw
steaming
ones.
them would be fine.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
What were some other things that you wanted me to talk about? That I haven't-
Eye diseases?
Eye diseases, that's right. So, so the best herb I know for the eyes is a herb called bilberry. All right, and bilberry is a cousin to blueberry and a cousin to elderberry. So it's very similar to what I passed around there. And bilberry actually, it was used in World War II when they rationed jam. They used bilberry. And the fighter pilots improved their eyesight. And they did some studies later on checking the eyes. And they found that bilberry improves eye function because it's high in vitamin A. And not only does it help improve the rods of the eye, but it can help protect against cataracts, glaucoma, and even macular degeneration. In fact, I had a lady who came in my store, the daughter of a lady who was in her 90s, and she had macular degeneration, and she started using the elderberry and went back to get a check with her eyes, and the ophthalmologist noticed her eye was greatly improved. Even though she had macular degeneration, it wasn't fully back to normal, but it was definitely improved. So
And what's the herb?
that was bilberry.
Bilberry.
Bilberry. Yeah, so bilberry is also very good for the immune system. It's good for the circulation. It's very good for the blood vessels. Any berries actually help strengthen the capillary wall. So berries are excellent for the brain and very good if you've got higher levels of cholesterol, if you've got clotting, if you want to help reduce platelet aggregation, you can use some berries. Bilberries, fantastic for that. Yes.
For people that are already on medication for this, how do you manage the herbal
Yes,
remedies,
let
the
me-
bilberry, they interact.
Let me cover that, because that's a good question. So, without going into all the interactions here, I'll just give you some principles. I don't actually recommend people use herbs in conjunction with a condition that exacerbates the condition or puts them in a critical situation. So let me give you an example. Let's say someone is on a antidepressant. Now, antidepressants are dangerous to get on, they're dangerous to stay on, and they're dangerous to get off. So if you're using a herb like St. John's wort with someone on antidepressants, you can exacerbate it because you're dealing with similar mechanisms. All right, just like if you took a blood pressure pill or medication like lisinopril, and then you used hawthornberry and you lowered the blood pressure even more, you can go too high, too low, too quickly, and end up with a stroke. So anytime you're dealing with people who are taking medication to stabilize them in a critical situation, I don't generally recommend herbs. Now there are exceptions to that because I've worked with people, so I just like to tell the public this. Not that, sometimes I'm still working with people who have sugar problems, diabetes problem, even depression, but I know what herbs to use that are safe. But if I had someone that was off the charts, then I would work with lifestyle first to get them into a safer position where then we could use some herbs. So the first principle is do no harm. Don't make anyone worse, okay? And don't put anyone in a critical situation, all right? So there are 46 different categories of herbs and drug interactions that have been clinically assessed that can interact. That's not 46 particular herbs, that's 46 categories of drugs that herbs can interact with. So anytime you're on like cardiac stabilizer medication or let's say antidepressant, seizure medication, blood sugar, blood pressure, you have to be extremely careful. So that's where a clinical setting can be helpful, or at least going to a lifestyle center. There's certain lifestyle centers that can help with that. I used to work at a lifestyle center in Georgia called Wellard. That's a lifestyle center that's been around for nearly 80 years. It's a very good one to go to, and there's other ones. I don't think there's any in Kentucky, in this neck of the woods, is there? I don't know of any in Arkansas.
Any mainstream ones.
Right.
There's a few beds here and there.
Yeah.
But there will be.
So you're gonna start one, Beauty. You're gonna start one.
If I does, yeah. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
I'll be the first in line.
Well, you can be healed by that.
Yeah. So, maybe you could have a few questions if you have some.
I just want to remind everyone that tomorrow he will be here between 10 a.m. to 7, right?
Depending on how many I get.
For
So, if you-
one-to-one consultation. So, and it won't be long. We'll just spend like half an hour with each person, depending on how grave the situation is. And also, we are planning to bring him back to do a better class where we have a little bit more time to advertise and so on and so forth.
Do you have time to do a one-on-one today?
I probably.
Yeah,
If it
hers
wants-
is diet.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I could see it there.
I'm at that point where, you know, I'm in the bed, it's hard to get up. When I pick my legs and arms up, they feel very heavy and
Okay.
it's,
She almost didn't make it today, and I told her to just come.
Glad you came.
So,
Sure, yeah, we can,
matter of fact, I wrote down some of the stuff
okay.
that I wanted to speak with you
Okay.
about. And everything you said is on my list.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. Yeah, I'll be happy to see you if you don't mind waiting.
No, I don't
Yeah,
mind waiting.
Okay, great. Yes, Mosa, you had a question?
And
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
You already asked my question.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, my mom, she's suffering from this arthritis in the shoulder. It looks, the X-ray revealed that it's bone on bone.
Oh, okay.
So, arthritis, that's affecting the function of her mind. Actually, it's like it's flaring up at the very specific time.
Right.
So what? And she doesn't know why. What happened? We're by.
Tell you what,
Huh?
can I set up a time with her, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because that'll take a little time.
I was, my stepdad has COPD,
Mm-hmm.
and I was wondering if there's anything, that he could take for that. I mean,
Yeah,
he's,
so with COPD conditions, I'll tell you some of the best herbs we use for that is mullein, okay, M-U-L-L-E-I-N. It's a bronchodilator, and it's very good for constricted lungs, emphysema, bronchitis, pneumonia, asthma.
in what form?
We do it with the extracts. And then the other one that is not so common, but is very, very effective, is a herb called lungwort. Now, lungwort, it actually is a bit like comfrey to the lungs. It's the only herb I know that actually can repair damaged lung tissue. Okay, so lungwort, it's similar to mullein in a way, but we've used it for people who have restrictive conditions so they can't breathe properly. I have one lady that has some symptoms of COVID, and she hadn't been diagnosed, but she thought she might have it because she couldn't breathe properly, and there was no other thing to explain it, and put on some lungwort, and took 24 hours
that
for it to
extract
come back to normal. Yes, the official name is Pulmonaria officinalis. There's different types of lungwort, but that's very effective for helping with constrictive lung conditions. If you want to, sometimes, people have a cough and they just keep coughing. It's good for that. So is mullein. Actually, the best one I found for persistent coughs is gymnema. Had a lady, she couldn't stop coughing for 12 months. Her husband couldn't even sleep in the same room with her. And
how was that spelled? That's what I was gonna say.
G-Y-M, like gymnasium, and then N-E-M-A, gymnema. It's very hard to get a hold of it, even for me. It's
Not the pancake powder.
yeah. You try to find it online. You'll be hard pressed to even source it. Yeah, and we have to get it. It's easy to get as a powder, but we can't make extracts out of powder. We have to use the leaf. Yes, sir.
Can you give some information about your online class?
Yes. We have put together an online course that's really for people that want to dig deeper into herbal remedies and learn how they work and be able to teach them and also make things in their home. So we actually show people how to do that. You could probably finish it in a few months if you did a couple hours a day. So it's actually, there's a link on our website, but it goes to another website. So it's me as a teacher, but I made the course and I handed it over to another ministry, and so they're the ones that are sort of overseeing it, give you the password, and sort of get you established in that. Yes.
And I think by the time you get done, we're gonna have it connected, the link somehow connected.
Yeah,
where
if you wanna
people
put
can go
the-
on the Tree of Life
We'll
and
put the link up.
be able to access,
Yeah.
this stuff as well.
Yes.
So you have a website though that,
Yes, our website is
What
is AmericanHerbShop.com. Shop is SHOPPE. American, none of us are American, but we put it up there. We say herb, you say herb, and shop is SHOPP for the old English name, so we're really confused.
SHOPPE?
Yes.
Yeah. I knew you were Australian as soon as I heard you say
Oh,
herb.
okay. Yes, yes, yes. So my accent's from down under.
So I can go to their website
Yes.
and get the
Yes,
information.
you can do that. Yeah, we're gonna be making more videos this year. We're gonna put available online. Something I'm planning to do in the next couple of months is take herbs in nature. We're just go for herb walks and identify herbs in nature that you can use, because there may come a time where we may not have access. You know, things are getting crazy in the world, and I think they're just going to get crazier. So I'm already seeing in the herb field that certain things are restricted to buy. I'm paying double for my herbs that I did 2 years ago. Things are taking longer to get to me, and it's really a challenge. You know all about that, I'm sure, Edie. So yeah, so you may want to stock up while you can, and then learn what is available in nature. around
Stock up now,
you. Yeah, stock up now.
because by the summer, things are gonna get pretty bad, and even food.
Yes.
Also, we do partner with Dr. Lee to make the Tree of Life tinctures. He is our consulting herbalist for that. And, I don't know if he told you, but, these tinctures work amazingly. And today, there's a special that's going on for the
You want to talk about that? Cause
Yes, the special for
Anyway,
today
sure.
is, it's $34.99 for today. And I think we're gonna do it tomorrow as well.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Because these tinctures are 90-day supply.
I should just say the
Extracts, I'm sorry, these extracts.
Just for-
Tinctures
no
are
worries.
90-day supplies.
Yes,
Right.
yes. Well, they're 90 servings.
90
So it
servings.
depends how many servings
Yeah,
you
if
take,
you
but
get-
don't drink the whole bottle at once.
Typically, the ones you get at the store, they're tiny
Yeah,
and
One
they have
ounce.
alcohol in them.
yes,
So these have no alcohol,
that's right.
which is no sugar, no alcohol, and they're
Yep.
organic, not
And
genetically
as we say in Australia, no worries.
modified.
Well, is there any other questions? Things that I didn't cover that you wanted me to cover? Yes.
I have 1 year when I have a stroke, fell down.
You have 1 year
1 year.
Calm down.
since you,
That's a stroke.
1 year I have a
oh,
stroke,
stroke.
stroke. Fell down,
You fell down. Okay.
yes,
Hurt your shoulder.
yes.
I see. Okay. Well, maybe we could set up a time
Yeah.
to see.
So some of the things we get a lot here at the health food stores, a lot of people who come in with gut issues,
Mhm.
definitely,
Yeah.
a lot of arthritis. There's also some question about schizophrenia, if you can touch upon that. We get a lot of cancer,
Correct.
the C word.
Yes.
A lot of
Correct.
Tourette's. There's some other things we get a lot though. I want to say that the gut issue is the number one stuff that we encounter. And a lot of these folks are coming, constipation is a huge one. But if you can touch upon a little bit about the GI, the digestive system right
Digestive
behind you
system.
there. And
Yes.
also
Yeah.
the schizophrenia, there was a question about that last night.
Yeah. What's the question? What can you
The
use
person wanted to know, again, just to put it out there for those who are watching online, we do not treat, diagnose
Yep.
disease. This is an educational approach to disease, and we recommend you consult your physicians for any of the aforementioned. They wanted to know what herbs could be beneficial for schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, the number one herb of choice I would recommend is the ginkgo,
Yep.
ginkgo biloba. Yeah, because it will improve blood flow, especially to the frontal lobe. Now there are other things in schizophrenia that herbs won't touch, because there's conditions that there are limitations. Put it that way,
Right.
with herbs, right? If someone has a spinal cord injury, or let's say they have a slip disc, well, taking a herb's not going to put that disc back in place, right? So there are limitations. It could help with the pain, it could help with inflammation, but so with schizophrenia, there's a lot of psychology that needs addressing, you know, and I haven't got time to go into that today, but you need to find someone that really understands how the mind works to be able to approach it. But, getting back to the GI system, you know, again, the best herbs for the GI are going to be your mucilaginous herbs, your slippery herbs, so aloe vera, you know, marshmallow root, even licorice root and aloe vera, anything that's slippery, because the GI is very susceptible to inflammation. All right, and so you have mucus cells that they help protect against the acidity in the body, and they help also provide a lubricant where food can go through. So that's where your mucilaginous herbs can come in. And there was a specific thing that you mentioned about the GI.
Yeah, there a lot of people coming in with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and we notice a lot of people come in with IBS, as well as it relates to small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. A lot of issues with the imbalance of the normal flora of the gut.
Talking about dysbiosis?
Yeah, so
Okay.
this lady came in, for example, just to give you an idea, she was vomiting for 2-3 weeks or so, diarrhea, loose stool, and we did a consultation with her, and we pretty much narrowed it down to the fact that she had just completed a round of heavy-duty antibiotics.
Yes, that's
which,
very
by the
common.
way, kills good and bad bacteria.
Yes, that's right.
And so we put her on some stuff. We gave her the GI, some GI.
Yeah, you have a digestive aid.
Yep, we gave her
which is
that, and then we gave her some other stuff, probiotic.
probiotic, yeah.
A plant-based probiotic, and she came back a week later. She walks in, she says, "I'm healed," and she was able to tolerate food afterwards.
Yeah, people that have had a lot of probiotics, they basically gonna take months to recover the intestinal flora. So one of the big causes of stripping out the intestinal flora, other than antibiotics, is wheat products, and gluten in particular. You know, I know refined processed things like refined sugars also do a lot of damage as well. But the gliadin, which is the protein component of the gluten, it basically lodges into the little villi and allows the opening of the villi. There's tiny little openings in the small intestine that allow food through, and so it can cause undigested food particles could go into the bloodstream, and that can cause reactions, autoimmune diseases, and so on. Another thing to keep in mind is that stress is a big cause of GI problems, because we have an enteric nervous system that's attached to the bowel, this nerve complex
attaches to the bowel is actually larger in weight than the spinal cord, and it's very susceptible for changes. So if you have big stress, you know, we try to educate our children. We don't always perfect this, right, John? But we always try to mention that no stress at the mealtime, okay? Because this is not the time for the bowels to tense up, because this will create a situation in the body where food can either go straight through you, like actually straight through you, so it doesn't get utilized, or for certain people, it opens up the bowel and allows undigested food to go into the bloodstream. So, on both sides is a problem. I remember we had a young man that we personally knew that he was about 6 feet tall, weighed 80 pounds. All right, so you can imagine he was like someone that came out of Auschwitz. He was eating 3-pound meals 3 times a day.
Wow.
And he was still 80 pounds in weight because the food was just going straight through him. So unless it gets out of that tube, it's not going in your body. It's not making you build up your body. So he had a bowel that was very, very tense, taut, and so it was impossible for him in that situation to absorb properly. So you want to decrease when you have someone that's very tense, sort of type A personality, very highly wound up. You want to use things to calm them down. All right, so we use calmative herbs for that. All right, so calmatives are very good for the GI. So, for example, peppermint is a calmative. Right? You know, there are things like you could use chamomile, for example. In fact, it's in the digestive aid. All right, so things that are calming, that are not going to cause the stomach to tense up, the bowels to tense up. Those are calmative things. Yes?
You say peppermint is good?
Yes. Now there is some controversy, depends who you ask about this, whether you should take peppermint for the stomach, because it could affect the esophageal sphincter and it causes the acid to go up. So if you've had heartburn, sometimes it's told not to use peppermint. I remember when I grew up, I used to go to restaurants and they would give you this peppermint wafer. It's called after dinner mint. And I found out years later the reason they give you peppermint is because it opens up the sphincter and it allows the gas to come out and it allows you to eat more.
Oh.
So you can cram another dessert into your stomach. Okay.
Oh, we grow a lot of peppermint, so.
But peppermint is extremely good for you. And as a tea, it's better than green tea. In fact, you know, we take green tea. I don't personally recommend green tea, and that may surprise some of you, but green tea has more downsides than upsides, but you won't read that so much online in the mainstream media. But green tea has polyphenols in it, which are good for the heart. They're high in antioxidants. They protect you against oxidative stress. They can protect the heart. They can increase longevity. But they also have dangerous elements in the green tea, like fluoride and aluminum and tannins that block iron absorption, and they can also affect GABA production. And so there are some downsides to green tea, but peppermint is number 1 on polyphenols. So green tea is used from a health perspective because of its polyphenols. Well, green tea is number 65 on the list. Peppermint is number 1 on the list. So if you want to get yourself some high antioxidant properties, take some peppermint.
How would you do the peppermint?
You could take that as a tea.
And how
Or
strong
you
would
can-
you make it?
Well, just 1 tablespoon. Well, it depends what
With
you're trying
raw
to do.
peppermint.
So 1 teaspoon to 1 tablespoon peppermint. If you want to relax digestion. You can also use a peppermint oil. If you use peppermint oil, just rub a drop on your
We've
tummy.
got both.
And a drop of peppermint oil is equivalent to 28 cups of peppermint tea. It's very strong. Yes.
Wow.
I'm sorry to digress, but I'm thinking of questions that customers have asked.
Yeah.
Some of them are watching online.
Okay.
Can you touch a little bit upon the lymphatic system?
Lymphatic system?
You know,
Okay.
more specifically, when there's blockages and
Yeah,
lymphedema,
Yes,
as
yes.
well. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, there are some herbs that can help, but to be honest with you, the best thing to help the lymphatic system is exercise. And so your muscles lie adjacent to your lymphatic tissue. So the only way to move the lymph along is to exercise. All right. And so, you know, even people that are bedridden can still do some type of exercise, even if they just put their feet on a little, one of those little bouncy trampolines and have someone bounce on them, like not just to get their feet moving. And because, you know, the thing is, when you're in a situation where you can't exercise, it creates more of a need for exercise. So that's why people have, what do you call it now? You have twitches at night,
Restless leg.
Restless leg.
restless leg.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's what you,
this person is,
but
she's quite heavy.
But lymphatic, if you want to, look, one of the best things to help is, besides exercise, if you're just looking from a botanical point of view, is to try some dandelion.
Yeah.
Dandelion root. Dandelion root. Yeah. So the lymphatic system gets congested because a lack of mobility, right? So there is no way other than exercise, and that would include massage, where we can drain the lymphatic system unless we apply pressure or we move.
Right.
So you want to use things that are going to assist in that. So exercise is the number one choice, right? Now, dandelion, what it can do is help improve liver function, detoxification, which improves lymphatic overload, and it can also drain fluid off the, if you've got excessive fluid, dandelion's high in potassium. There's an inverse correlation between potassium and sodium. So if you take more potassium, it will cause the body to excrete sodium, and every gram of sodium lost is 70 grams of fluid out of the body. So our friend here, he lost 20 pounds in the last few weeks. That was largely fluid. It wasn't so much fat. And so, you know, obviously you're doing something right, because in a way, the body's holding on to fluid to help protect itself against toxicity. That's what it's doing, to save your life. So, you know, that's a good thing that your body's allowing that excess fluid to go, because it puts you in a greater position where you don't have to carry so much to dilute what's going on with, you know, medications and so yeah, I would say exercise, and walking is the best exercise. All right, keep moving.
See, I
It
have,
was how fast or how far?
As fast as you're able with what you can, right? So I mean, if you can't walk a mile, walk half a mile. If you can't walk half a mile, walk a fifth of a mile, whatever you can do. And if people can't move a lot, I mean, I remember we had a lady came to a lifestyle center, and she was 350 pounds, and she couldn't take one step up to get inside the lifestyle center. Right? She had, her diabetes was so terrible. I think she was on 300 units of insulin a day. Right? She was really in a bad shape. After 3 weeks of being on the program, changing her diet and increase in exercise, she was able to walk a mile at the end of 3 weeks, and she was completely off all her insulin.
And if you can't walk,
Just 3
swim.
Yes, if you can't walk, swim. And if you
I have congestive heart problem too, and, one doctor will say, drink a lot of water, the other doctor said, watch your water Now, so what do you do?
Listen, 70, depending on your age, 70 to 80% of your body is comprised of water, right? And so you need water.
Yeah.
So you don't want to have too much water, but you do want to have enough that you have normal metabolism. In fact, if you don't drink enough water, your cells will crenate, they will shrink, and that will affect nutrient absorption in and out of the cell, increase toxicity, it will increase viscosity of the blood, that will put more pressure on your heart, it makes your blood sticky, creates more inflammation, so we need water.
So
That's a given.
he's supposed to drink water, but not too much. So how do you figure out what this amount is
What's
supposed
the
to be?
balance?
What's it about to be? Well, look, there's no one size fits all, but you shouldn't be feeling thirsty, right? So just sip water. Some people guzzle water. There's a right way and a wrong way to drink water. Imagine if it rains heavy, right? In 5 minutes it's disappeared, and you put a shovel in the ground. What do you find? It's dry. But if you take the same amount of water over an hour or two, it will seep in. So when you guzzle water, it will cause the bladder to trigger a nerve response to urinate, because the volume has increased too quickly. So it causes the body to get rid of it. Whereas if you do it slowly, it will absorb better, and it will be more compatible with your body's needs, and you won't have to urinate so much.
That's good
Right.
advice.
So
I used to monitor a lot of folks who were CHF patients. There was one of the things I noticed is there was a really bad imbalance in the sodium that they were taking in, especially table salt, that would cause them to gain weight. Two of the main signs you need to watch out for really is you should be measuring your daily weight. If you see an increase of your weight 3 to 5 pounds a day, that should concern you. You want to weigh yourself at the same time every day. You also want to monitor your breathing, because one of the first things you're going to start to notice is there's going to be some inflammation in the lower extremities, some edema. When you see some swelling and you start to get a little bit of short of breath, that's telling you you're starting to accumulate too much fluid than what you need to accumulate. So
yeah, well, with congestive heart failure, you have right-sided and left-sided, and then you can have both. So starts in your right leg, because the venous return isn't sufficient to take the blood back to the heart, so you get pooling effect in the right leg. And then if that isn't addressed, it goes back to the left side of the heart, and you have water retention. So the best thing to do in that situation would be not necessarily cut back all your water, but sip your water, and then also take high amounts of potassium that will offset the sodium, and it will decrease the fluid buildup, and then also increase the contractility of the heart muscle by taking hawthorn berry.
It
And
seems
that,
like you're doing pretty well there.
yeah, so that's,
So hawthorn berry?
Judy
Yes.
recommended
yes,
lemon in the water,
yes,
and that's what I do.
yeah, that's good.
So hawthorn berry?
Hawthorn berry.
Is there any herb that will like help rebuild a sick heart? Just
When you say sick heart, do you mean
like somebody. I also have a friend that's got congestive heart failure.
congestive heart failure? Yeah. So what's happened is the heart enlarges to increase the pressure, so it can get more blood through the body. So usually there's a constriction going on. So hawthorn berry can help with the heart muscle, and then we use hawthorn with hibiscus flower, and we also use some holy basil and a little bit of cayenne pepper, and that can help take the pressure off. I wouldn't say that the heart will go back to the original size, but it may take the pressure off from increasing that, so it gets bigger and bigger.
Well, I also have a pacemaker too.
Right. Yes. So you gotta be more careful. Well, unless there's any other questions, I'll see you again another time, looks like. Yes, ma'am, you have a
Yes,
question in the back?
my church is an English church.
Your what?
My church,
Sure.
my church is an English church. On some place. And I remember all song on the book. I can't remember that because I was a stroke.
Okay.
Tell
You,
me,
Thank you.
Thank you.
tell me.
Yeah, we're gonna have a private session.
okay, yeah, okay, all right, thank you. All right, thank you for joining us, everyone online. Hope it was a blessing, and feel free to go and see Yuli. Or
Yes.
come down tomorrow.
Yes,
Tomorrow morning, just in case you miss me.
all
All
right.
right.
Well, thank you. Everyone, thank you for showing up, and thank you again, Dr. Lee, for taking precious time out of your schedule, driving down from Kentucky to come and to entertain our questions. And I pray that the Lord will richly bless you. And thank you again for all of you who came to attend. And I pray that you will share the information that you received today. And everyone online, thank you again. And bye-bye.
Thank you.
And as we begin
Thank
on
you.
our side, we'll begin
Hope
with
I
a prayer.
didn't nominate.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah,
It's
it's like
fine.
you said, these are supplements, not
Yes.
substitutions
That's right,
for a good
exactly,
diet.
exactly.
So,
Yes,
what are the top 3 things to not eat?
yes.
So, in keeping with how we started, we begin with a word of prayer. We'll close
Oh,
with a word
okay,
of prayer.
sure.
Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for the breath of life. We thank you for the opportunity that we have to broadcast these truths that are fixed principles that we are to live by. Lord, I pray that you would continue to lavish us with your favor, that we will make good on what we received today through the person of the Dr. Lee. Lord, bless those that have received, and that they will bless others with sharing what they have received. Thank you, Lord, for your method of healing, which is bar none the best. And Lord, as we go forward, we will apply these principles into our life, that we may live life as it is in the Creator, even God. Lord, thank you for everything again, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right.
Got a question for